Hello everyone and welcome to Spirit Talkers Beyond the Veil. I'm your host Paula DeMontenay, and today I am excited and very keen to talk to our special guest Tim Findlay. So just quick introduction about Tim. Tim, as he says in his own words, is just a normal guy from Nanaimo, BC. He is a carpenter. He works also in construction. He's an ex-athletic coach and javelin thrower. He's a Freemason with a lifelong interest in the metaphysical, such as remote viewing, which he calls keys to the universe, and telepathy, consciousness, and Saskwatch. So we're going to get going because there's so much to talk about here. It's just like, wow. Okay.
Sounds good to me.
Excellent. So Tim, hello and welcome.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for being here today.
Well, you're more than welcome.
As you know, this podcast it's all about demystifying the metaphysical, or what I hear people call the woo-woo. So we want to demystify all those things and say, you know what, we're just normal people with these extracurricular interests, right? So tell me a little bit about how you got started in the metaphysical realm and what first caught your interest.
Well, apparently I had an invisible friend when I was little called Mary. And I don't actually remember Mary, although my sister mentioned about it because I would talk to Mary. We would do stuff like we'd go for a drive and Mary would fly underneath the car to protect us or something like that.
Wow.
So, but I kind of got thrown back in my early teenage. I think I was about 14 when I had what's called the Old Hag experience. And it's actually a worldwide experience. And it's a way for waking up young men to let's call it the astral world. Right. So you get visited by this old hag, and she scares you so much that it actually knocks you right out of your physical body, and then you have an out-of-body experience. And so I started doing astral projection spontaneously at 14, 15, 16, ish as a result of the old hag. So the old hag is also kind of like the succubus and incubus that you hear about as well.
Yeah.
And so she appeared to me in the face of the girl from The Exorcist.
Oh yeah.
And kind of went like, blah.
That would be scary.
And that kind of knocks you right out of your reality.
Yeah.
And that's sort of how it began. Then I knew that there was more to the world than just our regular, 3D. And, and I started to read what I could back in the day. There's certainly a lot more books and information out today than what there used to be. Yeah. But I read Journeys Out of the Body by Robert Monroe. He wrote 3 books that were pretty pioneering around astral projection. And so that kind of helped because there was sort of nobody I could talk to. Yeah. Like if I mentioned it to any of my friends, they just looked at me, like I was insane. What do you mean you're walking through walls and talking to dead people? Like, what's the matter with you? Yeah. I thought you liked playing football and, like throwing the shot, but what's all this nonsense, right? Yeah. So, it took a while to kind of progress because you sort of semi-shut it down because there's also no tutorship or anybody you could talk to. Yeah. I mean, my dad was just an electrician, my mother was basically a homemaker, and there was just no sort of mysticism in our family. Although, of course, I learned later that my dad actually probably had the gift too. We have Scottish Highlander bloodline, And anybody that knows a little bit about the Scottish Highlands, is they were full of witches and stuff. So I think I carry some of that bloodline, which is why I chose this body and this genetics in this lifetime in order to explore more of the metaphysical side. So that's kind of how it began.
There's a lot there already to mine here. Okay. So one thing is you mentioned the old hag. I've never heard of the old hag before. Is this something that people know about?
Oh yeah, the old hag, like if you look it up on Google, there's like pages on the old hag. And she goes by various names in various cultures, whether it's the Persian culture, whether it's the Greek culture, our Anglo-Saxon culture, Norse. They all have the old hag as part of their mythos.
Wow.
And then she's called by different names, obviously from different regions and peoples. I'm thinking the Lilith from the Bible is probably a form of the old hag as well. There's a lot to the old hag. And again, she's called by multiple names through all, Japanese culture, Chinese culture.
Yeah.
It's a worldwide phenomena. It's just one of the tools I think that Spirit uses to kind of wake us up and kind of shock us into a new domain of reality. So.
Exactly, because as you mentioned, you didn't have, in your family, or at least that you didn't know of, you didn't have the support of your family to say, oh, that's okay, I know what this is, and to guide you, right? And you said your dad may have had the gift, but you didn't know about it. And I think that's pretty typical.
My dad grew up in the John Wayne era of just being quiet all the time and, and don't talk about personal stuff, right? So, but later, I've had some other psychics say to me, well, your dad had the gift. And in fact, my dad was a Freemason as well, which is interesting. So he was drawn, I guess, on some level, but he never spoke about it.
Yeah.
So I was the last of 6 children, and I think they were just kind of tired of little kids questions by the time I came along. So,
yeah, they're like, whatever.
We'll send you off to boarding school, let them answer all of your questions.
Yeah. So then also in there's a couple other things. Okay, you talked about astro travel or astral projection. What is that?
Well, we're made up of kind of like a bit of an onion kind of thing, multiple layers in our being. So we have energetic bodies within our physical body. We have an emotional body, we have a mental body, we have a astral body. And so the astral body is kind of a lot like what you would consider what the soul would be.
Okay.
And so when you do an astral projection, you basically separate your astral body from your physical body. So your physical body just stays in a state of sort of sleep paralysis. And then you travel in your astral body, both in the 3D physical realm, but also up into the belief-driven territories of the astral realm, what we would call heaven, the afterlife area. So, and that's all very interesting, the belief-driven territories. I think of the belief-driven territories like the back lot of MGM Studios. So they're all full of buildings and props and actors and all these kind of things. And they're basically, the whole thing's set up in order to create a movie or video in which you're an actor and then you get to learn stuff. And it's the belief-driven territories is also where you go after you die, because it's a transition from the physical world into the spiritual world. And they don't want you to go into shock, like, oh my God, I'm dead, and then go into emotional shock over that. So you tend to wake up, like if you die in the hospital, you tend to wake up in the hospital in the astral world. And then there's doctors and nurses, and they're there to attend you, but they're really all just actors, angelic actors. Wow. Like, for example, I met my dad after he deceased in the hospital. And he had circulation problems late in life. They had to amputate, I think, his left leg from the knee down. Wow. So when I was in the hospital there with him, visiting him, I'm astrally there, he goes, "Oh yeah, I'm feeling much better." He said, "I've got the new doctors and nurses, and look, they even managed to put my leg back together." And then he pulled back the covers and had his leg back. And
Wow.
it's this transition where they take you from being sort of tired and weak to a place where you're strong and emotionally fit. They get you up, get you walking around. They take you outside through the gardens, and as that's happening, you're getting younger and stronger. And then at a certain point, they say, "Oh, by the way, you're dead." But as you can see, it's not like it's a terrible thing.
Right.
You feel more alive now than you have in 40 years, and so that's how they bring you through the transition. And yeah, and you look out the window and there's the gardens and there's the Elysian fields that we read about in the Greek stories of, you die and you wake up in the Elysian fields and all of those sorts of things. If you're drawn to let's say Victorian architecture, there's a whole couple blocks up there of the most fabulous Victorian buildings and structures. If you want to compete in the Olympic Games, there's like an Olympic Games that you can go to and compete and win and all the things that you wanted to achieve in your life. You can kind of do that in the astral world. So it can be a lot of fun if you look at it from that point of view. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Is it similar to quantum leaping? Now, this is something I'm hearing a lot about recently, as people are talking about the ability to go into the quantum realm and to, is it like you're saying, like a choose your own adventure kind of thing, to go to these other lifetimes and explore?
I don't know of course, with a background in math and physics, I understand what quantum means. I don't know if they know what it means.
Good point.
So yeah, I'm not sure what that means really. I mean, in the astral world, yeah, you jump around and you go to different kinds of realities. An interesting experience. A gal I know, Bonnie, where we ran into Robin Williams after he died in the Akashic Records.
Oh, wow.
And he was all depressed and all of this stuff. And he just said, I'm just sick and tired of the whole thing. And so I took my life.
Wow.
And he said, I've been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And so my future is just one of diminishing light and darkness and invalid. And I just don't want to. And so I killed myself.
Wow.
Well, this is before it kind of came out in the public domain that he actually had been diagnosed with like a Parkinson's disease. And so he was all kind of depressed. And we're like, well, you're loved by millions and millions of people. And he's like, yeah, but I don't really love myself. And, you know. But then later we ran into him again, and he's there in the Akashic Records, and there's like Athena, and there's like Hercules, and there's like Apollo, and he's cracking all of these one-liner jokes, and they're all laughing, and he's all laughing. So, he was kind of back to his old self, So you just don't know who you're going to run into up there sometimes. So.
Apparently not. Yeah.
So I think he's doing all right.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
So, interesting when you said your father, after he passed or transitioned, however you want to say it, died. I don't believe in death, but he left this earthly realm, that you got to see him again, and I find that fascinating because that's how I met and got to know my birth father, because I didn't know him in life. And as I was giving readings to family members, I got to know his personality.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, he's kind of funny and kind of cool guy, but I'd never known him. So it was pretty neat.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier about things like remote viewing are kind of the keys to the universe. Mm-hmm. So once you learn some of these, let's call them techniques, yeah, you can start filling in a lot of the blanks in your own life, around your ancestors, friends. We had a fellow in town here, grew up here, died recently, a very well-known fellow tennis player. And, I ran into him up in the astral realm. And this is a guy who had no, metaphysical leanings at all, really. But it was just kind of nice. Like, I went to his funeral and stuff. And then a couple of weeks later, I ran into him, and he was, I said to him, Artie, do you know where you are? And he goes, well, I guess I'm in heaven. I'm going, yeah, that's about right, Artie. Yep, that's right. And he liked motorcycles, so it was kind of like inside a house, sitting on a motorcycle making all this tremendous noise because, of course, it was indoors. But it's all just in the astral anyway. So,
Like, what is the astral realm from a scientific point of view and then from a metaphysical point of view?
well, the astral realm is just an area of consciousness, really. And so your consciousness in the astral realm is able to manifest things. So what we would call astral matter. So you can, when, like if you're at the cabin that's on the lake, you can kind of create these beautiful sunrises and sunsets, and you can go fishing for trout that are 2 feet long, and you just all kind of can create it in your mind there. We create every day out of our own mind. It just takes longer. Like it takes me to get a hammer and a nail and a piece of wood to actually sort of make something. But we create here all the time too. The astral realm is simply a place where you create simply out of your own consciousnness. You manifest your thoughts into a type of physical form. But if you go away, like say where the cabin on the lake is, that's a pretty common archetype for a lot of people. Once they go away, then the whole thing just sort of gets very quiet and still, and the lake no longer has any ripples on it. The sun no longer is moving in the sky. It becomes kind of like this, I don't want to use the word dead zone, but just nothing is happening because it's no longer energized because there's nobody there. But another person will come along and then they'll take up residence for a while. It's part of our transition, right, from the physical to the higher aspects of, let's call it heaven. And so then they'll say, well, I think we need an addition here, and I think I'd like to have a bigger wharf over here, maybe a hot tub here and the back veranda. And so they'll create that, And then when they go away, because they move on to higher levels of consciousness, then that just sort of sits as it is, and the next person moves in and then starts to recreate the cabin on the river or cabin on the lake kind of archetype. So it's basically, we call it belief driven because the astral world is created out of your beliefs.
Right.
So for example, there's a place in the astral world where you can go that has all of the churches and mosques and stuff. And the interesting thing is, like, the Christian church is right next to the Jewish synagogue, and it's right next to the the Muslim mosque and to the East Indian mosque. And if you just walk down the road another 100 feet, then you'd see another type of mosque or temple or whatever. So we are drawn. So if you're a Christian, you go to the Christian church, or if you're a Muslim, then you go to the mosque. Even though they're right next to each other, you sort of don't see that. And then they have angels, pastors that are angels, and then they start to sort of explain to the newly crossed over members kind of how the whole world really works. So they wean them off of the disinformation that we live in here, and they re-educate them.
Right.
Now, if you're not a spiritual person, you're more of, say, an intellectual, then you wind up going to the library. And in the library, you go to the reading section, and there's this great big room and all these stacks of books, and there's like another 20 people all sitting down reading, but they're all just angels acting like you'd see in a movie, right?
Wow.
And then a librarian comes over and they recommend, well, you should read this book and you should read that. And then they open up those, and then those books explain to them about the transition from the physical onto your, your astral area. So it's just a way of breaking the news to people that they've died, and in a way that they can understand that's best for them.
Yeah. And I've heard, I'm seeing a lot of this going around lately about us living in the matrix, this being the virtual reality. And what do you think of that? What are your thoughts? Are we living in VR?
I think the analogy with a computer system is a fairly good fit. Certainly the matrix that we live in has certain types of codes and dynamics and stuff involved with it. which is where you get into the whole thing about magic, and you get into things about sigils and magical writings and those sorts. And those are kind of like the computer language that you're able to access the computer with. So we have the English language, we have the computers, which are all ones and twos, and in between the two, we have what we call computer languages, whether, I'm going to date myself by saying things like Pascal and so on. So a lot of the magical stuff is kind of the way we overwrite that matrix reality, just like we would with a computer program. So if you want a computer program, let's say to compute the number pi up to 100 digits, then you would write it in a type of computer language. You would give it to the computer, and then the computer, having been given those instructions, would then print out pi. Right. And we do the same thing with magic. So you write a bunch of stuff down, and then you sort of give it up to the universe, which is your way of writing the computer program for our reality, and then our reality will manifest that magical incantation, So to me, it kind of works like that. And so, the idea of a matrix, I think is fairly. It's not the Matrix, but it's a fairly good analogy.
Right.
I don't know if one could ever really even understand it fully while you're in a physical form, but this is part of how magic works. Like, let's say next Tuesday I want to get an ice cream cone, and so I pray and I affirm and I do sort of magical rites around that. And then I go about my life, and then it happens that on Tuesday I stop in at Departure Bay for no particular reason to go for a walk, and then there's a ice cream truck there, and I wind up having my ice cream. So I've manifested that through programming the matrix, kind of as a soft example.
Yeah.
And so people pray all the time. Yeah. They try to manifest things happening in their life. Through trying to program that computer system, that matrix of our reality.
So is that what prayer is? It's really a way to manifest? Because I'd never thought of it that way before, but I like that. Because for me, prayer has always been a very religious thing, and I'm not religious. I was raised without a religion. So I always thought, okay, well, if I want to manifest something, I have to focus on it. I have to ask for it. But I guess prayer and asking is the same, really.
Yeah, and we have those spirit guides, that kind of work with us, and they're sort of waiting around, like waiting for you to ask them to do something, And so when you do a prayer or some such thing, you then give them permission in order to help manifest it. The problem is people intend and then they unintend, and then they intend and they unintend, and the prayer guides are back, start, stop, start, stop. I'm going to be a great artist, and then a week later, oh, I'm tired of that, this will never work. And then 2 months later, oh, I want to be that great artist. And so rather than focusing on being a great artist and continuing with that work, they start and stop and start and stop. And so they're telling their guides to start and stop and start and stop too, right? So singularity of your focus is very important. Magical stuff is based on intent. Right. And is based on, it's a consciousness thing, based on the power of your intent, the power of your emotional commitment. Like whatever you want to be good at in life, you've got to throw a lot of emotion at it, you know. Like you just can't sort of go through the motions and then expect it to happen or manifest, Like I want to throw the shot put 70 feet, okay. But do I really want to throw it 70 feet? And if I really want to throw it 70 feet, then I'll do everything that it takes to make that happen. All of the training and the study and the strength development, you have to put that in to make it happen, right? So magic without strong emotion doesn't happen either, It's about, like emotions are very powerful. Yeah. In the consciousness, they're very, it's kind of like the fuel that makes things happen. Right? So, I want to be a good piano player. Well, you got to get out there and practice. So you got to work and put all that emotional effort in to make it happen. Unfortunately, we live in a world today where people don't really commit themselves to a lot of real hard work to make things happen.
True.
And so then, well, nothing ever good happens in my life. Well, how much effort did you put into making good things happen in your life? You know. So yeah, that's very important. You know, the strength of your commitment, the strength of your conviction, right? So
I agree, because I've noticed in my own life, years ago, I wanted to be a filmmaker. I wanted to be a video maker. I have my whole life, but I had this background programming saying nobody wants to hear your voice, and so I developed this huge like goiter on my throat, and I had to have it removed, and all this silly, horrible stuff. And my career was just stalled. I wasn't going anywhere. And as soon as I let go of it, and I said, oh, whatever, I want to do it, but I'm not going to focus on it. I'm just going to live my life. I started getting grants, and I started getting contracts. And it's like, wow, now I've got 2 major contracts, and I'm super excited about where the future is going. But it's also, I put my emotion into it, right? I said, I would love to do that. This is something I would really love.
yeah, the problem is that we unknowingly will focus on the fear aspect. You're playing tennis and you don't want to miss your serve. Instead of thinking, yeah, this is going to go great when I put my serve in, you're like, I don't want to miss, I don't want to miss, I don't want to miss, and then you miss because you're focusing on missing, right?
Yeah.
And so that happens all the time. You know, the first thing that would come to mind when you're saying, well, no one wants to hear my voice, I'd be like, well, how do you know that?
Right.
Well, how do you know all these people who don't want to hear your voice? You know, how would you even know that?
Yeah.
You see? So it just becomes a projection. And then whatever you feed energy into, whatever you project with your consciousness, then molds that reality. So so if you have more of an attitude of I'm going to do this because this is what I love to do, and those who will be interested in such things will seek me out.
Yeah.
You know, and then that will make, you know, that will help to cause it to happen.
Totally.
And then you get, you know, the 99% that's all perspiration and of all of the work.
Yep.
So, but that takes, you know, again, commitment and you know, nose to the grindstone kind of stuff, right? So,
Can you think of a time in your life, because we keep talking about magic, right? Can you give us an example in your life where you experienced magic?
It has to do with a point of view as well. If you view the world as full of magic, then you'll see magic all around you. If you view the world as just a rotten, lousy place, then you're going, you know, to see the drug addicts wandering the street, and you're going to see the pollution in the skies, and you're going to see the, you know, whatever, you know, the garbage on the roads. But if your view is around sort of magical things will happen to me because I'm looking for magic, then you will find that too. So, so magic kind of happens all the time, you know, whether it's seeing UFOs or, you know, if I'm remote viewing something, I'm engaged in a magical practice, and I'm seeing something that's quite magical. So, for example, when I went to have a look at the Ark of the Covenant, which is in a cave, even to this day.
This is remote viewing. Okay.
After, you know, 26 centuries, it's still sitting there in this cave where it was placed just before the fall of Jerusalem, when they were under siege by the Babylonians. So, you know, you go and you see the Ark, and then there are Elijah and Isaiah are 2 of the spirit guides which protect the Ark. And then you engage in a conversation with them, and they explain how the Ark works and how it got there, and all the rest of it, and what the world was like 26 centuries ago, you know, in what they call the Holy Land. So that's a magical thing, really, you know. And so or you engage the Saskwatch people in a type of telepathic remote viewing conversation, and you learn about them and their way of life and what they do and their motivations. And so again, that's magic. But if you don't look at the world as having magic in it and it's just waiting for you to go and investigate, then yeah, you won't find magic at all. I mean, magic is everywhere.
Yeah.
It's not just the kind of magic maybe that you might see in the Freemasons or within other esoteric studies, Rosicrucianism and stuff. There's various forms of magic, But, taking that snapshot with your camera at daybreak on a lake, and then there's a loon flying by and you catch just this perfect shot, a little bit of kind of foggy mist in the background, that's magic too. But if you lay in bed and don't get up and go to the lake as the sun's rising and you whine and complain to yourself, well, of course there's no magic there.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
it's point of view, mindset, focus, I think it's all part of it, right?
like we basically can do whatever we want. You just can't do everything that you want. So you have to choose, I think Jordan Peterson said, you have to choose your sacrifice. So what is it that you want to sacrifice yourself for in order to achieve that, right? If I'm going to train to break the national records in weightlifting, I can't also be out, building 3 homes at the same time and trying to make $1 million. Or I can't be out trying to learn to play the piano because I'm busy weightlifting. You only have so much time. But I could do any of them. You just choose which one you want. So you choose what you suffer for, what you throw your energy and your agony at,
Yeah, yeah. And how did you come into this knowing everything that we're talking about now? Was it through the Freemasons, or was this through remote viewing or astral travel, or what kind of brought all this knowledge?
Well, part of it is I engage in an old activity called reading.
Reading. Get a card for your local library, kids.
And I actually will go and buy books.
Wow.
In fact, I even order books in.
I do that too still, I know.
So a lot of it is just reading and research,
Right.
But in the future, by 2150, we will have matured in a type of consciousness where we actually like hanging out with each other.
Wow.
And we actually spend a lot of time trying to help each other achieve whatever the person's greatest dreams are.
Do you know what it's going to look like? Because I've had these really strange dreams, about 4 in a row now, where I'm in another version of Earth. I know it's Earth, but I'm in another version of it, and it's Technicolor. It's almost like watching The Wizard of Oz, where it goes from black and white to color. It's like that, and everything's brilliant, and all the sentient beings communicate and respect one another. There's no killing, there's no war. It's just peaceful.
We have a thing called an auric field. It's an energetic field around our bodies. And if you are at a kind of a higher level of psychic ability, you can see auras in people and see auras in trees. And so I know people who are pretty gifted psychics, and they see things glowing all the time already. Like when they go for a walk in the forest, the trees are all glowing around them,
Yeah.
So that sort of Technicolor thing is right. That's kind of what we'll see. So I think in the future, you won't sort of really have total darkness anymore, because everything will tend to kind of glow on its own. Wow. Now, astral vision, which is the ability to use what we call astral light to see by, is kind of like that. Like if I, in my mind, walk out your door and I start walking down the road here towards the mall, and I look over at your neighbor's house and it's a white house and a gable roof, well, how am I actually seeing that, right? Because I obviously don't have physical eyes when I'm out there walking down the road. Well, this is what we call astral vision or astral sight. And what will happen is people will have that kind of astral sight just walking around in their physical body. I remember being in Vancouver years ago on a bus, and I closed my eyes and I could see everything going on in the bus, but it was black and white. Then I opened my eyes and it was all back to color, and I closed my eyes, opened my eyes, and I could see everything that was going on around me using astral sight, but it was only black and white. Our destiny God willing, is that we will move more towards that kind of, and a person will have something wrong in their auric field. Oh, I see there's something wrong with your shoulder. I can see it. I can see, like there's a hole or there's a darkness in your field. What's going on with your shoulder? And it's like, oh, wow, I got bad arthritis or something. And you'll be able to see it, in other people. And so in the future, we'll be in a position to be able to help each other more than we do today, which is why we like each other more in the future. Because not the socialist communist view, but more this humanistic view of simply helping people to achieve things more by working together. So, I understand that you like artwork, and what the hell, I went and bought you a whole set of paint brushes and canvases, and here, because I just felt like doing it. And then, so you help them, and then you feel good that you've helped them, and and then they help you in return on some level. So the future is much more of that, what do they call, pro quid pro or something, where, I rub your back and you rub mine, and then we're both better off. And so that's the kind of future we're heading towards, if we can get through all of this other stuff that's going on, politically motivated for the most part, political agendas, separating us into smaller and smaller units all fighting with each other, as opposed to a cohesive kind of world, a world where we are concerned about how our neighbors are doing. If they're older people, we'll get out the snow shovel and shovel off their driveway, or because it feels good to be part of a community.
And it does. I always say to people, when I volunteer, I feel good, like I'm giving back, and I'm not expecting anything in return, but I just naturally, the dopamine levels rise, and I feel good. It doesn't matter, so what? I went and shoveled my neighbor's yard, and they haven't shoveled mine. That's not the point,
I was wondering why we don't laugh so much when we get older. The older we get, it seems the less we laugh. And I was thinking about that, and I came to the realization that the reason we don't laugh so much when we get older is we stop doing all the stupid ass stuff we did that got us hurt when we were younger, and laughing about it. It's like, oh, I hit my thumb with the hammer. That really hurts. Ha 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 ha. Well, I don't hit my thumb anymore, so I don't laugh anymore.
So curious, that brings up something interesting, because I'm thinking, you mentioned about as we get older, we don't seem to laugh as much. But what about as we start to raise in consciousness? Are we going to have other things to laugh about, or is it going to become like joyless?
Well, this is what I'm saying. Humor is a funny kind of animal, and there's always a little bit of bite to the humor, whatever whether it's just, well, that was a stupid thing to think, that's funny, So I don't know. I know spirit likes laughter, though. Like if you talk to the angels and the guides, they love funny. Like they loved Robin Williams when he was up there in the Akashic, and you got Aphrodite and Hercules and them, and they're all rolling, and they love that. So no, we don't lose humor, but perhaps our perspective becomes a little bit different. Maybe the humor is more like a loving humor versus kind of a, that was a stupid thing to do humor, But yeah, we don't laugh as much because we don't do the stupid things that we used to get us.
Right. So moving forward, just curious, so the way...
Unless you're a dog.
Yeah. So if you can say we're evolving, we're growing, we are being elevated, consciousness is rising, where do you see humanity going?
There's a good likelihood that within 1,000 years there will not be any human beings left on the earth. We will actually graduate right out of here.
Oh, I've heard that before. What makes you say that?
Just some of the readings that I've done, not psychic readings, but book readings, of other people. That this sort of experiment Earth will kind of have run its course, and we will have ascended. Now, it could be that we're now on a 5D Earth, and the 3D Earth now goes just back to a type of more primordial state of just animals and forests and seas, you know. And maybe we've moved up to like a new Earth in a fifth dimension.
Right.
I think that's a possible outcome for us. You know, as a species, of course, we will join in the larger confederation of planets in the universe, of the more enlightened beings. Many of the aliens actually live in a higher dimension, and then they lowered and come into ours, but they'll move back up into where they're from.
Right.
You know, Syrians and Pleiadians and Andromedans are kind of at a higher level than we are, you know, further along in their development. So I think that kind of might be where we're going. And right now it appears that we will get there.
So, okay, so to try and give people, because we've now gone down this scary rabbit hole, a sense of control. I don't know if we even have control. How can we use everything we're talking about? Like, I keep thinking about changing of consciousness and how I can switch from the 3D to the 4 and 5D by using my focus and my mind and get out of this nightmare that we are in, right? Is that possible? Is there hope?
Well, very much so. I mean, you were asking a little bit about magic, and it's a magical act. How can we magically get out of this? Well, we can create it through our own intent, our own desires. By following your passions, following your bliss, as Joseph Campbell would say, by energizing what it is you wish to sacrifice for in order to achieve, then that's how you move out of it. But if you passively lay back and just sit there and play video games, well, you are no longer in your passion, you're no longer creating magic, and the dark forces are taking over because you're allowing it to happen, because you're sitting there, you know, or on Instagram forever just flipping through pictures of people you don't know. So, you know, you get out there in the world and you create the world you want to live in, you know. Like, this is part of creating the world we want to live in.
Yeah.
Right? For some people, it's marching with banners and it's, waving Canadian flags on overpasses. For some people, that's it. That's their passion.
Yeah.
And you know, good on them for that. But for other people, it might be, the hell with the video games. I'm going to learn to be a great chess player.
Right.
And I'm going to write that book I always wanted to write, and I'm going to make those videos I always want. If you live your passion, if you live the love energy of your passion, then that will go a long way to negating all of the dark forces. Like, if everybody did what they wanted to do, it would be such a happier world. And then we wouldn't put up with the darkness, you know, interfering with our happiness, you know.
I totally agree, and I've been saying that for years. Like, I switched off the news years ago, and there's certain things I won't partake in. And my mom always says that I'm completely unaware and I have my head up my butt, right? That's what she says. And I said, well, I hear what I need to hear from you and from other people. I said, but I'm trying to stand for something. I'm trying to stand for peace and love and harmony. I can't do that if I'm watching about the wars overseas and about people that are getting killed for no good reason. I said, I can't, but I need to do that. I need to be able to stand for that in order to keep myself sane and then to hopefully affect the people around me. That's how I'm dealing with it.
And get educated as to, like, I've been to the Kremlin, you know, I've been to Moscow. I've been in the King's Chamber in Pyramid in Giza.
I want to go there.
You know, go do stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and then when someone, you know, starts going on about the conflict in Ukraine and Russia, well, you know, have you ever been to the Ukraine? Have you ever been to Russia? Have you ever been to Europe? And yet they're full of opinions on it. But they're not really opinions. They're just programming.
Right.
Like, if I say to someone, I don't know, Donald Trump is a great guy. No, he's not. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. How do you know that? Have you ever met him?
Yeah.
Have you ever read any of his books? Have you ever gone to any of his political rallies? No, I just know. Well, how do you know? Well, I just do. I just know. Well, how? What? And then pretty soon they're all like, because they're programmed, you
I know.
see. And I'm not saying Trump is good or bad. I'm just using it as an example.
Yeah, totally.
Because people have all of these opinions, but it's just a psychological operation, what we call psyop. It's just an implanted emotional response to something. But of course, we manifest the world based on our consciousness. And these people are manifesting those beliefs which have been given to them through the media on an emotional level, and they believe it to be true, and they believe themselves to have opinions, but they don't really have opinions, they just have programming. That's part of the danger of everything.
Definitely, because you have to realize that you're programmed before you can even deprogram, right, or change the program. So that's something I feel that there's more people that I'm meeting and talking to are aware of it, and through these what they call alternate interests in our lives or the metaphysical realms, it's like we are just simply letting people know kind of what's going on. It's like, don't demonize us for bringing information to you, right? It's like, because otherwise you're just going to slip down that rabbit hole and you're going to be gone.
Well, the great thing about the psychic stuff is you're able to gather information from an uncensored source. Like if I go to the Akashic Records and I look something up, or I have an angel show up and they tell me some stuff, or I engage in some kind of telepathic communication with some alien, I'm getting unfiltered information, at least unfiltered from what I would get from CBC News, right?
Yeah.
And of course, you know, it has been said to me through the years, like, well, you think so differently on so many things. And yeah, well, because I'm getting information from places you don't get it from.
Right, true.
You know.
So, say for skeptics, because we may have a couple skeptics out there that are watching or listening.
Burn the skeptics.
What would you say, like, what would you give them to say, like, are there links they can look at or certain pages they can look at and just say, here, educate yourself? Like, is that how they can get started, or how can somebody get started into educating themselves and getting themselves out of the, the programming?
Now, how do you combine 50, 60 years of study into...
Just to start, like somebody that's like, I totally believe in the news and what's going on. And
if you can make the understanding that our consciousness is what creates our reality, if you can start with that as a premise, then you kind of have some places you can go with that. And if a person doesn't believe that, you can say, well, did you have breakfast today? And they say, yes. Well, did you think about it? Yeah. And so you had a conscious thought about breakfast, yeah, and then that led to you making breakfast, yeah. So your consciousness created breakfast for you today? Well, I guess so. I never thought about it like that. But if you can sort of kind of start to make that kind of leap, that consciousness is what creates the world for good or bad, right? If you can sort of make at least that beginning step, then you can start looking at where the information is coming from, where the programming is coming from, and start to sort of see that, well, maybe the only reason that I'm hearing certain things is because they're trying to steer my consciousness in a certain direction. Right. So in the 1970s, on the front page of Time magazine was, the coming ice age, and that we're going to freeze to death, And then it was all the hormonal things, and that, the hormone in milk and the hormone in cheese was changing our species. And then we had like acid rain, and the acid rain was going to kill all of the fish in the rivers. And then we had like this hole in the ozone layer, and the ozone layer was depleting, and we're going to die from radiation. And then today it's like carbon is bad, and it's going to ruin the planet, and nitrogen as well, and pretty soon you start to realize that they're just every 3 or 4 years, the COVID or whatever, they're coming out with a new something to be afraid of. Yeah. And what it is it's what they call the Stockholm syndrome, or trauma-based mind control. They can mind control a person if they put them in fear. And you put a first person in fear by traumatizing them. And once they're in fear and they're no longer sort of acting out of the logical part of their brain,
Right.
now they're acting out of the reactionary brain. Then you get into that that dynamic of David Icke talks about it all the time. Reaction. You want to steer the population in a certain direction. So you have to create something over here first to scare them, and then you will offer them this direction over here as being their way to get out of that fear that they're in.
Right.
There's a bird flu coming, and it's going to kill all of the people. So you need to take your bird flu shots at London Drugs or something, right? So what they really want to do is they just want to sell you a bunch of drugs and make a bunch of money at it, and get you to line up for it. So they get you to line up for it by putting it on the news that, oh, this new Chinese bird flu N1 something or other 5 is coming over, and get your flu shot. And look at your virtuous government. We are going to make your flu shots for free. You're going to get these free flu shots. Well, of course, our medical is still paying for it. It's not like it's free. Nothing's free. And then the pharmaceuticals are making billions of dollars off you taking these flu shots, which basically probably do nothing of any value anyways, So it's trauma-based mind control. They mind control you into shooting things into your shoulder, which you normally wouldn't do, but the reason you do it is because you're in fear because of the trauma of it on the news that it's going to kill everybody to get you over here.
Now, I find that really interesting just because I have, I've been, a medium and a psychic and a healer and all that for years, but lately they've been bringing me new ways to help go through trauma with people. And they've given me I'm talking about the guides, whether or not you believe in them, they exist for me. So they've been giving me these 2 ways to effectively reduce trauma in people. And they're really super simple. And they're things that people can do on their own, or I can guide them through it. Other people can guide them through it. And I find that fascinating that these 2 things are going on in tandem. It's kind of like the programming and the government and everything else is trying to create fear and trauma. And then the higher realms are trying to help us combat it by giving us these new techniques. And I'm just like, that's where I find my hope as well. It's like, well, we've got these ways that we can help combat what we're being, call it the mind disease, or the thought infections that we all have, right?
Yeah, well, everybody's traumatized.
Yeah.
And by intent. That's the trouble. The government is traumatizing its own people.
Yeah.
And because they keep rolling out all of these things to be afraid of all of the time,
So let's finish off with one kind of thought, one thing that you'd like to share with people.
Well, I guess, sort of circling back to the fact that the world is full of magic, and that if you go looking for magic in the world, whether it's, hiking into some lake in the interior of the island, and then suddenly you start seeing, fairies and elves and stuff. There's magic all around us if you're open to it. There are little people, just like there are Saskwatch people on the island. They're interdimensional little humanoid beings. They're only a couple of feet tall, two and a half, and they're there, and they'll come to you, but they're not going to come to you sitting in front of the TV, right?
Right.
So if you can upbeat by looking at the world as having magic, and that you are a magician yourself, and we all come into the world with magical gifts, and if you pursue your passions and you pursue your magic, then that's the life you'll live. You'll live a life full of magic. Artists, they they live in that magical realm. And we can all live it. We don't have to be like painters, we don't all have to be like piano players, but there's magic all around us. And the universe will support magic as well, right?
Yeah.
Like if you go and you hike into some place in the woods and you're by a beautiful stream and you just ask, spirit to show itself, show me something magical from spirit, then there's a high likelihood that that'll happen.
Yeah.
Right? But again, if you're playing video games and you're, playing some kind of avatar in some AI universe, well, you're not going to see that magic there. Right?
True.
So.
Well, I love that. Thanks for that. I mean, that gives me hope too. So thanks for sharing that and giving, people an idea of what can we do, right? There's got to be something. And I love that, is believing in magic and asking for magic. Find the magic in your life. I'm going to put this on the channel as well. Start telling people's magic stories and asking them to submit them, because I think it's so important and so powerful. And during a channeling I did a few months ago, the guide said to me, we need more magic.
Yeah.
So I was
well,
like,
passion
yes.
and magic, I also think are kind of one and the same, So if you follow your passion, you'll find magic on that journey as well then,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
And in ways that you never would have conceived of,
Yeah.
So,
Be open to it.
that's
That's what I say. Be open.
sacrifice for your passion, and then you will find magic. You'll find the, the rainbow, at the end of the yellow brick road kind of thing,
Yeah, totally.
Follow the road, follow your passion, and you'll find magic all the way along. Like Dorothy found magic all the way along, and she found, helpers with the Tin Man and the Lion. These like guides will come in, and they will assist you in your journey if your journey is navigated by your passion, and the passion comes out of creativity. Create things through your passion.
Yeah.
Could be photography.
Yeah.
And
I think that kind of lesson has been around for eons, right? You see it with Joseph Campbell when he talks about the hero with two faces and the journey of the hero's myth and stuff, the hero's journey rather, is that they've been given to us for thousands of years. They're like, here, this is a template. This is how you can create magic in your own life and then create the life that you want, the reality that you want. So we've gotten away from that. So now it's kind of like just reminding people, you can do it.
And remember, it's a journey mostly, not the destination.
Yeah.
Like when I coach kids, say, a young girl how to throw the hammer, what I'm really teaching her is not so much throwing the hammer so she can win a gold medal. What I'm teaching her is hard work, discipline, focus, dedication, energizing her own passions, all these sorts of life lessons around those sorts of things. Learning to compete under pressure, learning to be able to move up to a higher and higher level of performance, and increasing your self-esteem and your belief in your own ability. Because when the little girl goes out and throws that hammer, I'm not throwing it, she is. So she's still got to go do it. She's the one who's got to, say, get up on the stage and at the play and deliver her lines and deliver her expressions. As a coach, as a guide, we can show them the way, and we can give them certain tools to achieve it, but they have to then walk the walk, the hero's journey. And so it's not the gold medal that's so important, it's the whole journey of the 20 years or something that leads to the achievement of that. And maybe the achievement was the bronze, or maybe it was 6th place, but you still achieved along the way all of these life lessons around dedication and time management and discipline and self-belief, and so those are the things that are being learned, and those are what's important. So, but if you aren't following your passion, which in this case is say throwing the hammer, if you weren't involved in that passion, then you're not learning anything. You're just a passive victim, really. So.
Well, thank you so much for your insights and all this amazing stuff that now people can go and look into on their own and say, well, where do I find out about, astral travel and remote viewing and telepathy and the Saskwatch people and all that? Now they can do that. Hey. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, sure.
And yeah, once again, Tim Findlay, how can people find you?
Well, I'm up on Facebook. You can always look me up on Facebook.
Okay.
I was trying to bring a YouTube channel together called Tim Findlay's Amazing Vancouver Island,
Oh, right.
where I would, basically go out and find magic on the island and then show them. Like I was out looking at the dinosaur footprints on Newcastle Island last month, for example. So, and the only reason I knew about it is because a guy looked at my vehicle and saw Amazing Vancouver Island. He said, well, I have an amazing story for you. And so the magic came to me, but I had to put it out there by putting, you know, the decals and stuff on the truck, right? So
Do it. I'll watch that channel for sure. Do it, do it, do it. Thanks for everyone for tuning in and watching. And until next time, I'm Paula de Montenay. This is Spirit Talkers.
bye now.